Hello again. Well, hasn't it been interesting weather week this week? Very sunny, but oh my goodness, very, very blowy. In fact, the wind is still howling around outside, so you might hear some things banging around that the wind's carrying off up into the sky at the moment. So I hope you've had a good week. During this week, we had Ascension Day. Now, for Christians, that's the day when Jesus ascended, so rose up into heaven to go join his Father, and he left us here on earth. It's a very important day for us to remember. It happens 40 days after Easter, so it feels like such a long time since Easter, but it's only been just over 40 days, and a lot's happened in that time. So I've got a story here which will help to sort of recap and take us to the next point of story of Ascension Day. Here we go. It's from the line Storyteller Bible. There we go. And it's called Goodbye at Last. So when Jesus came back from the dead, he appeared many times in many different places. His friends were hiding in a locked room, so the men who killed Jesus couldn't find them. And all of a sudden, Jesus was there in the room with them. They were frightened, they were confused. They thought he was a ghost. But Jesus said, "Don't be afraid, it's me. It really is. Look, here are the marks the nails made in my hands, and the cut the soldier's sword made in my side." Then Jesus joined them for dinner and ate a bit of food to prove that he wasn't a ghost at all. Then, a few weeks later, his friends were out fishing. They couldn't catch a thing. Then all of a sudden they heard a voice from the shore calling, "Throw your nets on the other side of the boat." And when they did, they caught more fish than their boats could hold. "Wait a minute," said Peter. "This is the same thing that happened all those years ago, when Jesus asked us to follow him. It must be him on the beach." And all of a sudden, Peter jumped into the sea, clothes and all, and swam back to shore. The other friends followed as fast as they could, and when they arrived, they discovered that Jesus had been doing some fishing of his own. Jesus was cooking fish over a hot fire. They smelled delicious. "Dry yourselves off, sit down by the fire," Jesus said. "Let's have a picnic right here on the beach." Well, a few more weeks passed, and at last the time came for Jesus to leave, to go to heaven to be with God his Father. So he took one last walk with his friends up a hill near Lake Galilee, where their adventures together had begun. "I've got to go now," Jesus said, "and there is something I want you to do. I will send you a special helper, God's own Holy Spirit, and with his help, I want you to tell my story to the world. Start in Jerusalem and don't stop until everybody has the chance to follow me. And if you ever feel scared or alone, don't worry. Just talk to me and I'll be with you, I promise." Then, all of a sudden, a cloud wrapped itself around Jesus and carried him into the sky. His friends stood and stared, their mouths open, their eyes filled with tears, until two angels appeared and spoke to them. "Don't be sad," the angel said. "One day, Jesus will come back in the clouds, just as you've seen him go." So off the friends went, down the hill and into the whole world, to tell the story of Jesus. There we go. So what did you think of that story? Can you remember some of the things in there that we've been talking about? So when the disciples got to see Jesus again after he came out from the tomb, the shock and the surprise part of that, and last week talking about Jesus telling his disciples about the Holy Spirit coming, and we'll be talking more about that very soon. Everything that's happened since the Last Supper up till now has been leading to the moment of Jesus going back to heaven, going back to his home. And I don't know about you, but I think, wow, I mean, what must they have thought when they saw Jesus rising into the clouds, heading home to heaven? must have been a very strange emotions. I mean, maybe they were scared a little bit, maybe they were surprised. They were probably very sad. Jesus was their friend, and it's always sad saying goodbye to friends. And I know how that feels, because I have a friend that I go visit, and she lives on the other side of the country. And every time I leave and I have to say goodbye, it's very, very sad. But although I'm sad, I'm also quite happy, because I know that I will get to see her again and I can visit her again. And maybe it was a bit like that for the disciples. Maybe although they were really sad that Jesus was going, there's this feeling of happiness and hope, knowing that he will return. In fact, the angels, there were 2 angels there, and they told the disciples that he will come back again. And they didn't just sit around waiting. They didn't just sit there staring, waiting, looking at the sky. They actually went out into the whole world to tell the story of Jesus, it says. And that's what we're still doing today as Christians, and that's what I'm doing right here, is we're telling the story of Jesus whilst we're waiting for him to return to us. Now, I have an activity that you might like to try. Little bit more complicated this time, so hopefully you'll follow it okay. I'm sure if you've got a handy grown-up around, they'll help you with this one, but it's quite a nice one, I think. Here it is. Okay, so you will need a box. I've chosen one of these small cereal boxes. I've already cut my bits out, but if I show you, so that would be my box there. Okay, you need to remember, of your box, it needs to be quite tall, so that your little Jesus can, when you wind him up, it can rise to the top. If it's too short, there isn't room for him to move, obviously. So you need to make sure that you've got quite a tall box. It doesn't have to be a cereal box, you can use anything. But the other thing that you need to make sure, obviously, that the winder that goes through is wider than the box. So my winders I'm using straws for, because I have loads and loads of them from crafting activities. So you can see my straw is plenty wide enough for this box. You could use a pencil or something like that. Okay, so as you can see, you're going to cut some shapes out of your box. So the first one is the little window at the front. As you can see, it's not quite as wide as the box. It's just a strip down the middle, whichever way up, okay? Yeah, so just a strip cut out the middle of the box there, and that's going to be the window where you're going to see Jesus get wound from the bottom to the top. Okay, but to get to the to stick the paper on and everything at the back, you need to cut the back of your box out. Okay, so I've cut mine off there, as you can see all the way through, in fact. So that's how we're going to start our box. But don't throw away the piece of card that comes off the middle of your box, and I'll show you why in a moment. Okay, so next we need the piece of paper that Jesus is going to travel on. I've chosen blue, so it looks like the sky. But if you haven't got blue, if you've got white, you could colour it in blue, or if you've got something else, it doesn't matter. Nobody really knows what colour things would have looked then anyway. So who knows, maybe the sky was bright orange, or it's just, it doesn't have to be exactly right, shall we say. It could just be whatever you've got lying around. Okay, this is where your cutout strip of card is handy. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to take our box and we're going to measure the width of our box. So if I find my pencil, so you'll put your cardboard box on top, you'll have it flat on the table, I'll just lift it up so you can see it. So you put your cardboard box on top of your piece of paper, so it's running across one edge of your paper there, and then if you draw a line under the bottom of your box there. So if I lay mine down, I can just quickly do that. Okay, oops, stuck to me. Okay, so that's a line going along there, and that's now the width of the box. Okay, your piece of paper that Jesus travels on needs to be narrower than that, but not so narrow that it shows in the window. So this is where your little piece of cutout card from the window comes in. So you will then take your piece of paper, and again on that same edge you will take your strip of card. This is only roughly, so don't worry too much. And then we're just going to draw along underneath there. But that's how wide my window is, and then that's how wide my box is. So your piece of paper that gets wound up is going to be halfway between those two lines, okay? So if you now fold your paper at that halfway point, so you'll fold it over. There you go. So if I open up, you can see that the fold is halfway between the two lines, okay? So now we're going to cut along that edge, okay? Okay, keep that piece of paper for later. So there we go. And so if I open up, you can still see there's the fold. Okay, and now we're going to cut along that crease line. Okay, so you can see I've cut it in half, and then we're going to stick those together like that. When I put it on the box, obviously you won't see the lines because I'll put them at the back or I'll rub them out. So if you stick them together and you make your nice long piece of paper, it needs to be about twice the length of your box. Almost twice the length of your box. So whatever size box you need, you might need more than one strip of paper. So again, you can get another one and you can add it on depending on how your box is really. But yeah, so you'd want it so it's roughly twice the length. There we go. You can see this is probably a bit too long for this box actually, but roughly twice the length of the box. Okay, so that's that part. Next we're going to put our winders in our box, and how I did that, as you can see in the side of my box, I've got two holes, one at the top, one at the bottom. They're both quite close to the front edge where the window is. So there you go, you can see the window there. And as you go around, the holes are quite close there. Now I just used a pencil to punch holes in the side of mine. I put some blue tack underneath and I pushed a hole through and wiggled it. Now thankfully my pencil is basically the same width as my straw is there. Okay, you don't want the hole to be much bigger, if not it moves around too much. So if you're using say a cardboard tube or something else and you need to cut a circle out, I would just say just cut a little bit at a time. You can draw around it, measure it, but don't make it too much bigger. If not, it might just keep falling out. So yeah, so you need whole top and bottom and top even. And you need to do that on both sides. Now the way I lined mine up was I looked where the top of the window was, and my holes are halfway between the top of the window and the edge of the box there. So if you can see, if I turn it slowly, and you see they're sort of halfway between the top and the bottom, and the same at the bottom there. Okay, right, that's that bit. Now we're going to put our winders in. So I'm going to do one. There we go. And another one. Okay, so they sit in there quite nicely because the holes are quite snug, so they don't fall out. There we go. Right, now we need to stick our piece of long paper onto our winders, and this is quite fiddly. Grab yourself an extra pair of hands, another grown-up or an older sibling or someone who's quite handy to have, and we're going to stick them, sorry I've got stuff stuck to my finger, to the straws. So I'm going to take a little piece of sellotape, and I find it easier this way, but you can choose whatever way suits you best. So I'm going to make sure that the sellotape is stuck to the side that I want to be seen, not the side that I've drawn on. Okay, and that's going to go into my box, and that's going to tuck, it's hard to show you from here, that's going to tuck underneath the straw winder, okay, and then I'm going to push the sellotape onto the winder. Okay, once you've got it stuck a little bit, you can roll it round and then just push your sellotape down. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so as you wind it, you'll wind it and you'll see the paper will start to come around. Okay, so that's stuck on one end. Then we're going to do the same on the other end. Okay, so I'm going to tuck, see I've tucked that behind. So because the top of the box is open, it's much easier. You can always open the other end and then stick it back down again. So I'm going to tuck that behind and then wrap the tape around. Oh, and then I can wind my paper on. So now you can see the paper sits really close to the box, and for grown-ups this might bring back some memories, because I remember doing this certainly. I remember making a little TV shape and drawing pictures onto a very, very long strip of paper, and then as I wound it I would tell a story to go with the pictures. So it's like my own little cardboard TV. There's lots of online tutorials, so if you can't follow this you might be able to follow one of those, but that's where the idea came from. So now you've got this part here, what you can do is you can decorate the front of the box. There we go, so that's your blue background of the sky there. Okay, next we're going to pop Jesus onto the sky. So I've got a little offcut of scrap paper here. Jesus needs to fit in that little window, so again your little strip that you cut out from your window becomes very handy. So if you draw around it, there we go, you can see I've now got a space where I can draw my little Jesus on. Now your Jesus, when he travels up and down, you need to make sure he's not too tall, so I would say probably make him about a quarter of the size of the hole that you cut out. And how we're going to draw him is we're going to do a weird sort of mountain, rounded mountain shape. You'll see what I mean in a moment. There we go, so that's going to be the head and the body of our Jesus. About a third of the way down, so enough room to allow for his head. We're going to put little triangles almost onto the sides. If I draw them and show you. Doesn't that look weird? But it will come together, don't worry. And then just on those triangles, just again some little U's, which will become our feet and our hands. Does that make a bit more sense now? Okay, and we're just going to cut that out. So that's my little Jesus shape there, which still looks a bit strange until I colour it in. So let me grab my felt tips. So I'm going to give my Jesus here, he's going to have brown hair. A different colour on the little circles that are his hands, just to show that they're different from the rest of him. There we go. Now I'm just going to, I've got a bit of blue here. If I hold it against the blue, then hopefully you can see that nice and clear there. Can you see how it's how to change the shape? So my Jesus, you're looking at him from behind. That's why it's got that rounded shape. But you could just as easily make a face on there. So now we need to take that and we're going to stick him on the bottom of our travelette. So first of all, you need to wind. Once you've worked out what's the top and the bottom, so that's going to be, I've decided that's going to be the bottom of mine. You need to wind your piece of paper till it goes down as far as it can. I'll show you inside, so you can see there's no paper wrapped around the top there. That's all wrapped around the bottom there, so it's as far down as it goes. So now I know where Jesus can stick onto the blue part. You can see my little Jesus at the bottom there. And now when I start to wind, you can see he'll move up. Okay, but we haven't quite finished yet, so let's pop the last few details on. At the top of this inch card, we're going to have our cloud. Now I again just used an offcut of card from a cereal packet, because I have quite a few of those lying around. My family loves cereal. And all I've done on the other side, you can see I've cut out the cloud shape, and on the other side I've started to glue my cotton wool. So I've just finished the last bit and pop a bit more cotton wool on. Oops. Again, take a bit more time. Play with your cloud shape. My cloud I've made slightly wider than my box because I think it looks nicer when he disappears behind a big fluffy cloud. Okay, so that's my cloud with all the cotton wool stuck on, and I'm going to stick that on the top of my box. I'll stick this top bit down in a moment. When I do it, I'm going to put the glue onto the box here around the window where the paper moves, because I don't want to accidentally stick to that, because if not we won't be able to move it then. So I'm going to just cover this part with glue. I'm going to put my hand behind it just to give it something to lean onto. And my cloud will overlap slightly the top of the window. So my glue is going to go down the sides just a little bit and across the top there. Let me take my cloud and push him on the back. And you can press it down. So you'll see from the back there, a bit easy to see, that the cloud overlaps the edge of the box. I hope you can see that. So it's just that bit wider, a bit bigger there. Okay, and also on the bottom of mine, I'm going to put a little Bible verse. I quite like it on my crafts because it reminds me of where the story is or what the message is of the activity we're making. I've chosen a green piece of paper just because I think it looks a bit like the grass, and you can see this is the verse that I've chosen today. Sorry about my fluffy fingers. And it says, as the disciples watched, Jesus was lifted up and a cloud hid him from their sight. So that's our finished craft. So let's see it in action. Ready? Here we go. So I'm going to wind Jesus all the way up. And keep going. Keep going until he's completely hidden by the cloud. So that's your craft for today. You might want to have a think about maybe praying slightly different this week. If you've got some bubbles lying around, maybe have some left over from a party you went to a while back, or I don't know, maybe you won some, who knows. There's always a little pot of bubbles lying around, isn't there? Or you might have some, you can make some bubble mixture with some soap and water. Perhaps you want to go outside, especially while it's nice and windy like this, and blow some bubbles, and you'll see the bubbles and they'll get carried up into the wind, and it will remind you of Jesus going up to heaven. And as those bubbles go up, you could send your prayers up with the bubbles. So maybe you want to pray for your family, so you could say thank you for your family, and watch the bubble disappear up and know that it's going up to Jesus and it's taking your prayers with it. So that's something else that you could do this week, which would help remind you of the story. And it'll be interesting to see how far they blow in this wind. Anyway, we're just going to finish with our prayer, and if you're ready and you want to join in, just close your eyes and we'll just listen, and you can say amen at the end. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Enjoy making your activity, and please send some pictures to the Facebook page if you do make something. I'd love to see if you're following along, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye.